Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am coming to you from my mum's garden in Oxfordshire in the UK. That's one of the reasons I haven't done a video for a while, is I've been travelling for a couple of weeks and I've got about 3 more days, and I thought I should do something before I leave. Now, I really haven't had much time to do any kind of photography really, because I've been seeing friends and family, but the little photography I have been doing is I've been using in the garden just very simple setup here, and I've been trying to use the pre-capture on the Nikon Z8. So basically what I'm trying to do is, I haven't done a proper setup. You can do this way better, where you properly work out where the bird's going to be. You can switch it into manual focus and then you make sure you get really sharp shots, but that takes too much planning. It's my mum's garden, I don't really mess about too much. So basically the feeders used to be here. I've just moved them to here. I've put a couple of very rudimentary perches here. And what happens is the birds come from that tree, and they fly and land on here, They usually don't land on the perches. They basically just land on this one and this one. Very occasionally on that one. And I'm standing in the living room there, and I'm just using the pre-capture, usually 120 frames a second, to see if I can get some decent bird in flight shots. Now, because the pre-capture on the Nikon is only JPEG, and that is quite a big con, you've got to make sure you get your colors right. So you've got to be careful about the light and whites blowing and whatnot. But it's just been a bit of fun experiment, just to try practicing to see if I can get some shots. I think I've got a few shots, nothing great. So what will happen is they'll take off from this tree, come into here, land on here, especially the blue tits. They just grab a nut very quickly, go back, and they can go back any direction. If it's not in the exact plane of focus parallel to me, it will be out of focus. And to try and combat that, I've stopped it down. So I think yesterday I was at F8, F9, about 2,000th of a second depending on light, auto ISO, and I was using 3D tracking. Now on the pre-capture, and again I need to read this manual and I haven't done that, when I do 120 frames per second, it's the whole frame. But when I do 60 frames a second, it zooms in a lot. I'm not sure why that is, and I wanted to use 60 frames a second because there's so many wasted shots, but I don't want it zoomed in, so I've been using 120 frames a second without the zoom. So that's enough waffling for now. The seeders are getting low, so let's fill up with some seeds, see if I can get some more shots. Right, so it's very sad. So it's my last morning here in England visiting my mum. I just love her garden. It's just so nice to relax here. The weather's been so great since I've been back. And because I've been so busy, as I said before, I have had no chance to do any real photography. So I just thought it would be a good chance for me to try the pre-capture in the garden, doing small birds in flight. I wasn't really interested in setting up proper perches and getting nice portrait shots of the birds, because there's not so many species, and I've taken photos of them before. So I just wanted to get birds in flight using the pre-capture. I'm not sure how many great shots I've got, to be honest. As I said, I didn't really set it up exactly how I would have wanted, because it's my mum's garden, and you know, I'm standing in the living room door and that's her chair, and I'm standing right in front of her with a camera while she's trying to drink her tea, so it's not ideal. But I've enjoyed using it, and I think depending on the light, it is a good function. What I do like about it, in comparison to the Olympus OM1 Pro Capture, which I think is probably the best implementation of all the brands of this particular function, I think. I mean, it's definitely the original one. Obviously that's in RAW, and that's a huge thing. I mean, shooting in JPEG, you know you're not going to get those great editing options you're going to get shooting RAW. But I do think the implementation is more simple than this. I literally just do the frames per shutter button, and I just press it down and then wheel until I get to 120 frames per second, and that's it. And then it goes to pre-capture, and then I just go back to, and it just seems to be slightly less complicated than the Olympus one. I didn't even think about, I can't even remember how I set it up, but it wasn't a big deal. I just literally put, I think you just put the amount of time you want the shots to be taken after you press the shutter. So I just put 1 second, and I think that was it. It was a really simple implementation. I remember when I got the OM1, it was quite a bit of an effort figuring out how many shots you want before the shutter, how many shots you want after the shutter. This just seems to get it done with less fuss. You can hear those red kites. I really wanted to photograph some this time, but again, didn't have a chance. Anyway, so it works pretty well, but there are limitations. If you know those limitations, it's definitely usable, I think. And I haven't really looked at the shots yet on the camera, but I think I've got 1 or 2 okay shots. Nothing great, but yeah, it's been fun anyway. But now I've got to head back to Okinawa, which of course I'm excited about, but also sad to be leaving. What is super cool is just look how many apples have fallen on the floor in my mum's garden. It's like an orchard. So yes, pre-capture. I'd definitely give it a go. I wouldn't just completely ignore it because it's JPEG, which I think probably a lot of people will do. Hopefully in a firmware update in the future, they can make it RAW, and that would really then be a great feature, I think. In the end, I was kind of 2,000th of a second f8, and I was kind of just messing around with the focus area, which, you know, the large box or the small box, but it was just fun to use. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and see you on the next one. Take care.